What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream. Happy Wednesday to everyone out there. Today we're doing the good old-fashioned Q&A stream, so whatever you guys are asking in the chat is what we're digging into today. Starting out, John was asking about test kits. We'll see. Why are all the test kits so different? We can't all afford Hannah's converting to Saltwater. So Saltwater is actually a very solid brand. It feels to be one of the more reliable ones. I know with like the Alcatronic and some of those, that's the brand they use to confirm it's calibrated correctly. So Hannah is definitely a solid choice. Or sorry, not Hannah, Sallyford. But the biggest thing with just about any test kit is consistency. Especially the manual ones with the drops. If you're using your little dropper, your little syringe, you need to be doing the exact same amount every single time. If you are doing a lot of the manual test kits with the syringe, you can get those calibrated ones that are either preset to say 5 or 10 mils, or you can get the adjustable ones, which I think that's an awesome way to make sure that you keep things consistent. And no matter what test kit you use, that's going to go a long way just to keep your results solid. What is going on, guys? Welcome to the chat. Tyler, John, Shelly, Chris, Diamond Reefer. Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful Wednesday. I am well, thank you. What else we got? All right, Brennan's Reef. Love if you could touch on how to raise pH in a newer tank. It's only being replenished by water changes. First of all, if you don't have a ton of coral in there, honestly, don't really worry about the pH too much. If you are doing water, if you do have a bunch of coral in there, then I would worry a little bit more about it. Again, from anyone that's kind of new to it, if you have higher pH, you generally get higher growth out of your coral. They seem to be happier and they do grow better. Now, usually dosing like an alkalinity solution there are certain ones that will help boost your pH more. That's one way of doing it. You can drip Calc water as your supplementation method, or the simplest way, open up a window. If it's becoming summer or warmer you guys are now, having the windows open, fresh air makes a big difference. What's going on, Ryan? Elizabeth, do you recommend Hannah though? I recommend certain Hannahs. Personally, I have the Hannah Alkalinity, which I think is one of the best ones. It's fairly affordable for reagents. It's quick and easy to use, so I do like the Hannah Alkalinity. The Hannah Phosphate, I think, is really good. The manual dropper test kits, I find them hard to read, the blues, because it's super subtle. Where the Hannah, you got your nice digital readout. So that one I definitely think is worth it. I do have the calcium one, but I find the refills to be on the expensive side, so I don't tend to use that one very often, but I do have it. And those are the only kind of core ones I use. There's a bunch of other checkers that I haven't tried yet, so it depends. Thank you so much, Shelly, for the super chat. Remember to hit that like button. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Shelly. Makes the YouTube gods happy, so if you hit the like button, always appreciated. John, I added Miracle Mud to my sump 2 weeks ago. What's your opinion of it? Okay, so Miracle Mud is basically just a way of adding a more diverse bacteria to your tank, or there's also like certain trace elements that'll be within the mud as well. So you are adding both of those when you add it to your system. Now in my tank, the tank beside me, I didn't add any of that to it. My water box, I did add a bag of Miracle Mud and a bag of I believe it's Aquaforce Biosource. I put both of those in my sump under my Chaeto, and that's in the bottom of my Refugium. And I did do the aquabiomics test, and it was pretty dang diverse, and I kind of partially attribute it to that. Now, I am a little curious. Does it wear out? Does it go away? Is that bacteria still there? So I actually am going to do another aquabiomics test. I have one. I just haven't actually done the test yet. I need to get on that. But I'm going to do another one and then compare it. And then probably I'll have Eli on for a stream again and review the results. And it'll be really interesting to see if things changed over time. How is my tank, a year ago versus how it is now. So I think that'll be interesting to see. So I'm kind of excited to see. And that might play in a little bit as a way to find out if those muds, those life biosource, do they run out, or do they keep replenishing that bacteria? Or certain ones might outcompete the other ones. So I don't know, it will at least loosely half answer some of those questions. Eric, hey, hello, you are welcome. Elizabeth, Tyler, best substrate for Refugium, not just Chaeto Ball, actually Refugium. If you are putting a substrate in Refugium, I honestly would recommend, like something like the Miracle Mud or the Aquaforce, the Life Bio, I think it's called, as your mud. Because it is a bit of a mud. It is a good substrate for, the mullum, the copepods, everything to kind of break down in. And it does have the side benefit of adding bacteria and minerals to your tank. So it does help with the trace elements to an extent. So that's personally what I would do if you want a substrate in your refugium. I wouldn't necessarily do like sand or rock rubble and stuff like that, because it's just going to trap detritus, where the other stuff is kind of more of an area that's going to thrive for the microfauna to help break it down a bit more. So that's my personal take on it. Jay's Aquatics, what do you think about dosing Phyto while having high nutrients? And also same question about Reef Energy AB+. So, interestingly enough, it depends on the Phyto. Some people, if you're using the, whatever the actual Phyto stuff is called, I'm blanking on it, F2 fertilizer. There's some people that will also use like Miracle Grow and stuff like that. But if there's too much, called Life Source. Thank you very much for that one, Mark. Aquaforest Life Source. They do have another one that's called Bio something. I think I'm blending the two in my head. So with Phyto, I have heard people claim that dosing a ton of Phyto to the tank can actually lower nutrients. And I think this is a double-edged sword depending on how you look at it. If there's a ton of fertilizer in your Phyto and you're adding that to your tank, you're adding those nutrients, which is the fertilizer for the Phyto, to your tank. Now on the flip side, if you have a bunch of Phyto in your tank, you have decent lighting, and the Phyto is actually growing in your tank, then it can potentially be sucking out nitrogen phosphates. I don't know if this is like any measurable amount. I've seen people claim it. I haven't personally tested it, but it is food for thought, right? If the Phyto is growing in your tank, it could be sucking out nutrients. You know, if you're dumping stuff that's full of F2 fertilizer, you're going to be bumping up your nutrients a bit. So, Jessica J, what do you feed baby rock flowers in the sand and how often? When I had babies and I did spot feed, I was using stuff like Reefroids. There's Reefroids, and I did have some of the Reef Blizzard powders, and I would mix them together, or I would use mysis, but not the big ones. If you de-thaw frozen food, you get all the big chunks and all the little tiny bits in the water left over once it melts. I'd use the two of those and just make a bit of like a slurry of coral food, and I'd dose that to the rock flowers. And I found that worked really well. Jay's Aquatics, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. Much appreciated. Ryan, good morning from Japan. Far away. Nice. Welcome, Ryan. Brennan's Reef. How much cleanup crew does a tank need? Like how many snails for a 90-gallon? What's your opinion on hermit crabs? Certain hermit crabs are awesome. I like the red ones. I like the Halloween ones. The blue legs can be punks at times. Tenowek6395. 99 super chat. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So in general, hermit crabs can be good, but they can also be jerks. If they're underfed, they will steal food from your corals. That's kind of the jerk side, or they could potentially try and eat your snail to take their shell. So that's a consideration. I don't think there's any straight up rule of how many to add for a tank. I think most people add too many. I would just, maybe you go to your LFS store, you pick up 10 or 15, add them to your tank, and, a few weeks later, if they look like they're not doing their job, add some more. I don't think it's a good idea to say add 100 to your tank at once, because some of them are going to starve and you're going to lose them. They die, they'll pollute the water, and it just doesn't really help your cause. So I think it's better to start a little light and then add more as you need them. Any tips on adding a nem to a reef and not regretting it? I love bubble tips, but bubble tips will eventually take over. My original shallow reef tank, I started with one, and there's only one for about a year, and one day I came in and there's three, and then they decided to move around and walk all over my acros. So if you have like mainly an LPS tank, softies, nems are awesome. If you are into SPS and acros, eventually they're going to move and sting them, and you won't be as happy when they're hitting the acros. So personally, I tend to stick to more ones like rock flowers now that aren't going to necessarily go attack my acros. Not that they purposely attack them, but they walk over them and they will sting them to an extent. Elizabeth, my blue leg drags his shells all over my frags. Yeah, the blue legs are probably my least favorite, just because I find they're a little more aggressive than the other forms of hermits. Thanks for this much teaching before I committed. Wouldn't have my nano without the channel. Oh, dude, thank you so much. Hopefully your nano's doing amazing, and I do appreciate that. It's nice to hear that all my endless efforts help. So I definitely appreciate that. Thank you. John, I put my crabs in my sump after seeing them eat my snail. So yeah, if a crab wants a bigger shell, it will eat a snail, kill it, and steal its shell as its new home. So that definitely happens. Tyler, how's the Vivariums doing? Pretty good, actually. The one beside me that you can't see, I guess I'll do an update video on it soon, but it is filling in quite nicely. And I started a second one for all the baby frogs. So I have all these little tadpoles. You know, I have more eggs in here. They keep laying eggs, so I have a bunch of tadpoles that I've put in. Once they actually grow up, we'll be going into my other one. So I don't know if you can see them, but there actually is a bunch of tadpoles in here of poison dart frogs. So they're doing pretty good. And it is definitely a fun little rabbit hole. I consider the plants land corals, but it's kind of a nice contrast with like the jungle to the reef tank. Best of both worlds. What's going on, Niagara Fire corals? Opinions on urchins. I would not personally do a long spine urchin. I would, however, do the smaller ones. The pincushion or tuxedo urchins are kind of my go-tos. The tuxedos, they do a fantastic job. They stay small, ferocious algae eaters. If you have an acrylic tank, though, don't do it because they will actually mark your acrylic. Those little teeth will put little tiny divots and dents into it, and then your glass or your acrylic won't be as pristine. But if you have a glass tank, fantastic. I remember on one of my prior tanks, I had a bunch of hair algae and all this stuff growing my refugium. I put a tuxedo down there. A week later, my refugium looked brand new. It was just sparkling perfect. Like, they do an amazing job. Please do an update on the dart frogs. All right, I will work on that one probably in the next couple weeks. And actually, I'll probably do a video. I filmed a bunch of cell phone clips. It's probably not quite as fancy, but of the build of the new one, so it'll be kind of cool. So I'll time lapse that or do something fun with that one. Carl, I have started to experience very high pH in my reef aquarium. How high is high? Okay, 8.7. Okay, I'm now averaging around 8.4, and I can reach up to 8.7 in the afternoon. How worried should I be about the animal health? I wouldn't worry too much, to be honest. I have heard of people that intentionally have kept it that high and without issue free. I believe Ryan Cunningham was one of the ones that kept it at that 8.7-ish, and his tanks are fine. They look amazing, so I wouldn't worry too much. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd want to go much higher than 8.7, but I think you're fine being there. I've actually, on mine, I started to run the skimmer only in the evenings now because I have the CO2 scrubbing media. So I turned it off in the day when the pH is high, and I turn it on when the pH starts to drop down. And I've also been dosing the elk supplement at night, and it's interesting to see. It's up to my baseline of what my pH low is, and it kind of goes up and flat lines. It goes up and flat lines. So I'm playing a little bit. It's still one of those things where it's hard to 100% say how much of a difference it makes, but things are, for the most part, pretty happy. Is it okay to dose aminos every day? Absolutely is. Aminos are a basic building block of life. Your corals will definitely use it. You do not have to dose it, but I do find the corals do look a bit better when you dose them. Now, that being said, I have not personally dosed them in the wild, but I also feed mysis on a regular basis. And I feel that the mysis also adds a lot of aminos because it's, you know, coming the oils from that fresh shrimp that you're adding to the tank. But if you're feeding pellets or flakes, then I definitely think it's more important to dose aminos. But yeah, now there is, you know, some people say if you overdose it or there's too much of it, then there's a risk of getting cyanobacteria in the tank. And if that happens, you know, just dial back how much you're dosing for the aminos. But otherwise, you're good. Chris, what's the best glass scraper that won't scratch the glass? I am a fan of the flippers in general. I have the Toonsy and I have the flipper. I was back and forth on which one's better, so I ended up picking them both up. I like the flipper max edge a bit better overall, but with that, I don't use the scrubby side. I only ever use the blade on it. So I never use this side of it. I only ever use the blade. So the blade on the glass. Now, if there's nothing to get stuck in between it to scratch the glass, at least on this guy, it has these little nubbies on it, and those little nubs suspended off the glass a little bit. The only thing you got to watch out for, you got to make sure there's no snails or astrinas or anything hiding on the edge of it, because then you run the risk of those guys' shells scratching your glass. Now the flipper edge, it's further off of the glass and has a blade on both sides, and that's kind of why I like it. But that one's been pretty solid. The Toonsy also works very well, and it is smooth, but it works well if it has the floaty on it. Without the floaty, I find it comes off the glass too easy, and it doesn't work quite as well, but it's thicker. So at least in my water box, where the corals are closer to the edge of the tank, it smacks them a lot more. When the flipper, it's thinner, so it sneaks around stuff. So that's kind of my rationale of why I ended up with that one after testing out a bunch of them. 77 watching, 19 likes, slacking. Alright guys, be sure to hit the like button if you guys are watching and enjoying it. Question, just got my ICP back from ReefDudes. My iodine is 0.2222. What can be causing high levels of iodine other than trace elements in the normal range? I guess first question is, do you dose it? If your iodine's that high, the odds are something you're dosing has iodine in it. And likely just got to cut that back. So you'd have to know what all you're adding to your tank. But my guess is whatever one of your supplements has iodine in it. OUA812 Reefer. When you do a water change, do you or have you added bacteria? I have not. Lots of people do that on like a regular basis. I've only really done it if I'm either A, cycling a tank, or B, if I'm trying to fight something. If I'm doing some treatment, then I'm trying to like kill back like chrysophytes or some kind of a bacteria-based algae, then I might dose some bacteria on top of that just to kind of like boost up the good stuff a bit. But as part of a regular water change, I haven't, mainly because the bacteria lives on most of your surface areas rather than the water column. So it's never hurts to boost it up, but I don't necessarily say it's required either. So food for thought. How long can saltwater bacteria live in freshwater? I have absolutely no idea on that one. It's a very good question. Reef with me, ReefDudes. I need a monitor, not a controller. Apex Junior or Hydros X3 pack, and why? I need to monitor temp and pH. Either one will do the job for that one. It's a toss-up, to be honest. Whatever you get a good deal on. Whatever one comes with, you know, the probe, the pH, and the temp controller. Either one will work. Mike. Dosing 2 parts, started dripping Calc. Calc consumption seems to have gone down. Can Calc be slowing as the tank adjusts? I know, well, the Calc is also dosing Elk as well, right? So if you're dosing more Calc water, you're going to need to do less dosing because your Calc is dosing for you as well. So I'm just going to assume that your Calc is just offsetting your dosing. So just dial it back a little bit. John Wright, just a massive thank you for helping us keep our reefs. Happy to help, John. Hopefully your tank is doing amazing. Thank you. Vincent, I'm going to be going for a fish only with live rock to beginner corals. What do you recommend for beginners? I have 3 Radar XR30 Pros on a 180 gallon. Well, you're set for lighting, so that's covered. If you want to start with easy corals, I would start with easy ones like Zoas. If you want, and softies, like right there, I got a big, kind of see the big green, but I got a big toadstool there. Super easy. Same with Zoas, mushrooms. None of those guys really require dosing. They're going to be fine with just your water changes. If you do want to test and pay attention more, then you get a little bit fancier and get to stuff like hammers and frog spawns and those types of corals, and it adds a lot of the flowy movement to the tank. But then you got to pay a little more attention to your alkaline, calcium, magnesium when you add those into it. But if you're only doing water changes, super simple, Zoas, mushrooms, softies, like the toadstools are great places to start. Anemones, rock flowers, again, same with those. They're soft, they don't have a skeleton, they're not as finicky. And anemones are a great one that's always a crowd pleaser, super easy. Salty Dad, a hole in the flesh between blasto polyps has appeared. You can see the white skeleton. I'm going to do an iodine dip. Do you know what could cause that? I have no idea what could cause it, but iodine is always a good one because it's going to kill any bacteria. If it is bacteria related, then there's potential that will help for sure. So it definitely doesn't hurt to do an iodine dip. It's something I do. If I frag corals too, I tend to dip them in iodine after, just so the saw blade or anything, it doesn't have any bacteria effects on the coral. Ryan's Reef dosing 2-part, but the tank is consuming a lot more elk. In search of equal parts calcium will be mid 500s. I have never personally been able to dose identical elk and calcium. All of my tanks have always required more elk than calcium. So I mean, they say equal, but I've never been there, so take that with a grain of salt. John, do you suggest adding calcium hydroxide while adding alpha reef? I would probably offset the dosing. That again, I haven't used alpha reef. It does have a bit of like an offset, so you might be fine dosing together, but in general, you dose one, wait half an hour, dose the other one, or just 20 minutes. Use one to make sure you're not dosing in the same area so it doesn't precipitate out, and you'll be safer. Reef mate, I'm struggling to control bubble algae in my sump, which is used for frags as well. Small fox face, I already have low nutrients, help needed. So you could, a couple options here. The natural approach, you obviously have a fox face, which are known to eat bubble algae. You could add something like an emerald crab as well. Those guys are also great bubble algae eaters. If you want to take more of the chemically approach, Vibrant, which has a bad rep, but it is an algicide. It does work on getting rid of bubble algae. I've used it for that in the past in a nano tank, and it did work well. There's also supposedly fluconazole will also get rid of it, and I believe it's at about a 2 or 3x dose. I have used it to kill a hair algae at a 2 or 3 times dose, and I'm fairly certain it actually took up my bubble algae as well. So that's another option, and it might be a better approach rather than the Vibrant. So that's stuff if you want to take more of the sledgehammer approach to it. So a few different options. Kevin Johnson, any tips on scraping Coralline algae from the seams? Always afraid to damage the silicone. Yeah, that is definitely a tricky one. Don't use anything sharp. In the past, I honestly just used my fingernail and just went around the seams on it. I wouldn't use any hard scrapers. If the other thing I've used, like in the past, like not necessarily silicone, but like on curved tanks, bent glass, I just used a Mr. Clean sponge or a melamine eraser sponge, whatever you want to call it. The biggest thing is make sure it's the original, there's no additives, but that did work pretty good as well. And I also have used that on the acrylic sumps and it doesn't scratch, so you're pretty safe on that. Good to know. You are most welcome. Macon, I am dosing Alpha Reef and Calcwaser, although Calc is dropping. It's about 5.2, calcium 450, magnesium 1250. I would dose a little more magnesium, and you definitely want to up your alkalinity a bit. 5.2 is definitely on the low side. You would want to dose an alkalinity supplement on its own to boost it up. So your sodium carbonate or bicarb, get one of those and just tweak your alk back up on its own. Calcwaser is kind of like an all-in-one dosing solution, same with Alpha Reef. So it moves everything together. So you can't really tweak a certain parameter. So it is good to have a little bit of like the raw chemicals, the sodium carb or bicarb, and dose that just to boost it back up and just sneak it back up to whatever level you want to keep it at. But yeah, 5.6 is a little low. I usually would like 7.5 to 8.5 would be a happy range in my opinion. Joe, 30 days into fishless cycle. Nitrate is at 1.5 for 30 days. Ammonia 0.05, 5 ppm nitrates, just wait it out. Also, should I add 2 ppm ammonia again after it goes to 0? Okay, so you have 0.5 ammonia. Once your ammonia drops to 0, dose some more ammonia. Because ammonia is what feeds the bacteria. That's basically replacing the fish poop in a fishless cycle. And yeah, basically you can even dose them now. You can dose it now, and if you get your ammonia up to about 1.5, and you can dose, a mill or two of ammonia, you see that your level's up there, and then within 24, 48 hours, it goes back down to 0.5 or 0, then you're pretty much cycled. You just don't want to really get your ammonia above about 2 because that stalls out the cycle a bit. Brennan's Reef, suggestions for dealing with vermitid snails. I know bumblebee snails, but is there anything else? Bumblebee's the only tried and true. You can break them off. That does work. You can kind of super glue them. Mike Pletta, back in the day when I had him on, he was talking about dosing coral snow, which is calcium carbonate, I believe. It was just like the powder, basically chalk. But he was dosing that to his tank, and he was saying that was getting rid of it. So you could try that. Coral Snow by Zeovit would be the brand name, or you could make your own with like a calcium carbonate powder. OU8212 Reefing, how's the beautiful Peninsula tank? Overall, pretty good. A few of my torches are not happy. I did have 1 or 2 heads reseeding. I've been on my to-do list for about 2 months now to take them out and redo that KFC dip on them. I haven't done it. It's my own fault, but I do need to do that soon. But otherwise, the tank's pretty dang happy overall. That's the only, I guess, slight complaint I would have, but everything's growing almost too big. I've fragged a bunch of stuff for a buddy the other day, and you can't even tell I touched anything, so definitely happy, which has been doing good. Thanks for asking. Ryan's Reef. I can't get detectable nitrates, and my acros are not happy. Is there any tips I can get some nitrates in my tank? I don't have a skimmer, and I feed my fish very heavy. Well, the easiest way would be, if you're feeding heavy, add more fish to the tank. Fish poop is going to give you nitrates. There is stuff you can dose to the tank to dose nitrates. So I've seen people using stump removers and different things. I've never personally tried that. I've always been in the camp of, I have higher nitrates, I need to get them down. I have none, I need to up them. Actually, that's a lie. I have done on this tank. I have dosed Brightwell's Neo Nitro to this one. So I have upped it, but in general, if your tank can handle it, just add some more fish to the tank. That's your easiest, most natural approach to upping your nutrients. John, I don't understand why I can't keep Zoas. My candy canes don't thrive, and even had Xenia die. Xenia either likes the tank or doesn't. I've had it where it just thrives and goes crazy, and I've seen tanks where it just will not live. It refuses to. Certain tanks, or certain corals, just don't like certain tanks. That's just the way it is on certain ones. There's probably some underlying cause, or missing trace element, or too much of a trace element. I don't know if it might be a while before we ever figure out what the heck those little nuances are. But there's a certain ones where it just does not like a tank. And I've had, certain corals where I've tried it and just refused to like my tank. So unfortunately, maybe the way it is with some of them. My tank isn't clean, but LPS, Montipora are all doing well. I'm confused. Yeah, so I don't know if you ever ICP test your tank, John, but if you ever do, it might just be worth seeing if something is out of whack or lacking or super elevated. But yeah, it's hard to know what the magic bullet is, especially if it's just certain corals, which is always a weird one. You're most welcome, Joe. Any new products you are excited to try this year? I don't know, actually. Oh, that being said, I am going to go to Reefapalooza this year in like 2 weeks in Orlando, so I think that'll be fun. I went to a show in probably 3 years now since the world went crazy. And yeah, so I'm excited to finally go to a show. So if anyone's going to Rap Orlando, come say hi. Should be fun. Link and do a couple big water changes. Yeah, that is a solid plan. If you are missing something or something is elevated, I mean, big water changes kind of reset things. Especially if, you do essentially a full water change over a week or so. You can do a big one a few days in a row and you more or less reset your parameters. Yeah, as for tech-wise, I'm not really sure on new products. I'm out of the loop on what's coming. So at least going to a show, I'll figure out some of the new stuff. I'll probably film if there's anything really cool, make a video about it, so we'll find out. Can we have the recipe for your potassium dip? I feel like it was 6 grams of potassium per liter, but I might be wrong. I would have to go back and watch my own video to see what the ratio is. I know I did say it in the video, but I don't think I've done it since then. Oh, that was for the aqua-eating flatworms way back when. For a potassium dip, just in general as a coral dip, the Polyp Lab something that's potassium salts. Polyp Lab 1 maybe? No, it's a dose of 1. Can't see from here. But Polyp Lab does have a dip that is potassium salts, and that does work very well as a coral dip. It's gentle, and I find it works well, so I definitely do like that one. But I haven't bought corals in a while, so I will let you know when I do. Certain reefer, I feel like my auto water change system is a bit more detrimental to stability within my tank. A little over a year, I'm changing 2 gallons a day on a 50 gallons. That's actually a decent chunk. You can probably just tone it down a bit. But honestly, if you're changing 2 gallons a day, your tank shouldn't really notice that. Like, especially if you're taking out adding, the water level barely changes. It should be very minor. If anything, I'd say your tank should be happier, to be honest, than not happy. Mike, what do you think about oxalinic acid method Keith has been pushing lately? I have no idea. I haven't actually seen that. I'm going to have to watch Keith's video. I have not heard of the oxalinic acid method. That's new to me. But I will check it out later because I'm curious. I'll be there. Hope to see you Saturday. Best day in my opinion. Excellent. Awesome, Barry. I will probably be there. Well, I'll be there the weekend anyways. So Saturday, Sunday. So it'll be fun. John, this hobby obsession is amazing. Cons, not one tank is the same. It is so true. It is, honestly, every tank is different. Even this tank to my other tank. Certain corals will love one tank, but they won't be as happy in the other tank. And so it definitely is the thing. Every tank has its own ecosystem. Even, who did I have on the wall ago? Abe. His system, he has like 7 tanks all plumbed together. And even his, he says the tanks are different. It's the same water, but there's something different about the biology of the tanks. So it goes to show, it really is different for every single system. Island Reef, any new 3D print recommendations? Prints or printers? I put a deposit on a Prusa XL like a year ago. I'm still waiting for it. Hopefully they're coming soon. I'm excited to be able to print really big, cool stuff. for Prinza. I mean, a while back I made the mini trident, which is kind of fun, the case for it, and I made my own little tray for it to make it vertical. I haven't designed too much lately for reef tank stuff, just like useful things for like tool holders and different things. But I will get back to on some cool stuff once I get my new printer and dive deep in. I do have a lot of cool products ideas, but again, I need a big printer in order to make them. What's the best salt mix you found the best? It's so hard to say. I don't think there is, a best salt per se. They'll have their pros and cons. If you want the cheapest salt, the budget salt, you got good old Instant Ocean. If you want the better ones, they're all going to work. None of the salts are going to kill your tank. They're all going to add benefits. They're all going to dilute the bad stuff. They're all going to replace them with the good stuff. A lot of it comes down to, do you care about how pure the salt is? Do you care about your mixing bins getting dirty or cleaner? So I don't know. I can't say there's any like a night and day difference from salts. I have the last year or so I've been kind of bouncing back and forth between the Brightwell New Marine and the Aquaforest salt. So those what I've been using, but again, I've used many different salts and they all work. So food for thought. Half time it's like my decisions like which one's on sale of the brands that I like and go from there. The original controller board I got here today. Thank you so much. Heck yeah, Doghouse Reaver. Congratulations on that one. Thanks again for the follow-up and opportunity to get rid of his bird's nest. Happy to get rid of the rat's nest of wires and make it pretty. Send me a photo once you got it all installed. I want to see it. That's awesome. Hemlock, aka EDK. Eddie, what's going on, buddy? I sold the wrench. Yeah, you do. It's nice to see you getting back into reefing. It's been a while. Eric, have everything about auto water change but didn't pull the trigger. Talk me in and out of it. I have changed water in 3 months. I have an auto water change that I was using for a gallon a day. I turned it off for a while because I ran out of salt, and I haven't turned it back on yet. And I'll do a big water change, like 50 gallons every 4 months or so. That being said, I'm probably going to go back to getting my auto water change rolling again. I just got to recalibrate the pumps and make sure I got, the mixing bins all good. I do plan on, I think I'm actually going to get a salinity probe next for the mixing bins with through the apex so I can make sure my salinity is proper for the bins. And I'll probably get my auto water change rolling again, but that is kind of the next stage of reinitiating it. It's not that you need it, but it's nice to have, especially as automated, make sure everything's are going nice. I do have my bins auto refill, so it's just make sure I'm not all water changing. It gets refilled and the salinity's off and that type of stuff. Grassy Peak, thanks again for the polyplot potassium info. You are most welcome, Chris. Yeah, that one's honestly been one of my favorite dips because I find it's gentle, but I don't find the corals get as stressed versus other dips. And it seems to kill a lot of stuff. I still have this cool dipping container Simplicity sent me that I gotta try, but I haven't bought any corals in a while. So maybe at Wrap I'll get some. And then I'll do a dipping video. Economical Reefer, does macroalgae chaetomorpha need to be in quarantine? No. Will it bring in pests? Possibly. Depends where you buy it from. It's possible that you could bring in something like planaria, or most likely would be Aptasia. That's probably the most common pest you're going to get off Chaeto. When I got mine a while back, I gave it a bit of a freshwater dip where I threw it in just RODI water and left it in there overnight. And that probably killed off a lot of little creatures. But Aptasia is going to be your biggest potential risk of bringing it in my opinion. Certain Reef, I'm also a bit confused on the auto water change playing such a factor as well. Testing with Salifert, Hannah, both seem to be pretty wide swings in phosphate and nitrous over the week. Feeding is pretty consistent. Honestly, I don't think there should be that big of a difference. Auto water change, especially if you have a 100-gallon tank, you do a 2-gallon water change, you're only changing 2% of your water. It's not very much. And even over the week, 2 times 7, 14%, probably more like 13 with a little bit of thing. It's not that big of a difference. What's going on, CJ? CJ, you didn't tell me soon enough, buddy. I don't got that one prepped. So no link today, but enjoy another time. Good old CJ, haven't seen you in ages, man. Perhaps too much rock in biomedia. Actually, thank you for mentioning that, Certain Reef. Whoever was asking earlier about raising nitrates. If you have a lot of biomedia or ceramic bricks in your sump, those are denitrifying, and those could actually be keeping your levels super low. So removing some of that media can actually help boost your nitrate up a little bit. That's a great point. I don't know if that's what you're telling or if that just sparked in my mind, but thanks for that, certain Reef. Niagara fire crows. You should make custom frag racks. Could be sweet. I would love to buy a laser cutter one day. I think that'd be awesome. I can make so much cool stuff. So might happen eventually. But I do have some really cool stuff planned for once I actually get the big beastie printer that can print like big stuff. I think it'll be awesome. I got some really cool ideas. Mr. Captain something something something. Without going through all your videos, what all hydros are you using? I am not using hydros at the moment, but I was using it for a while. And the biggest thing I had, it would work awesome for a while, and then the Wi-Fi plugs would be a bit flaky for me, and I don't know why. So if I was to do it again, I still have all my hydro stuff, I'm just not using it at the moment, but I would buy the brain that has the plugs and the brain built in. That's the way I would go if I redo hydros at some point. But I've used it for random stuff, like as an auto top off or just different things. It's kind of like my just like random project stuff I use it for at the moment. OU812 Reefing. Unfortunately, I have to go. Thanks for what you're doing, and thanks for all the reefing community. Thanks for hanging out for a bit, and have a wonderful evening. What's going on, MB Reef? Eddie, thanks for the super chat, buddy. Happy to be back into reefing. Quick question. I want to cure my rock. What will aquascaping it dry kill off the cycle of rock? It will definitely kill back the bacteria. If you're going to do that, just keep the rock wet. Don't let it dry out. Generally what you do is put some salt water in a spray bottle or just splash it or just spray it down every like 10 minutes or so. Just keep it moist. Don't let it dry out. But otherwise you can take it out, you can scape, you'll have a little bit of dry off, but at least you'll preserve, the majority of the bacteria. Hello from New York. What's going on, Kevin? Jason Gatton. First live stream I've caught, love all the videos, been a great help. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I've had a bunch of people tell me that today. Thank you. I do appreciate that. It's nice to know that the endless efforts are helping. So that's awesome. And yeah, if there's any other stuff you guys want me to dig into, let me know. Now, one thing, I haven't even opened the box yet, but I finally got my new tops from Top Lids, which I'm excited for. So that's likely going to be next week's video. They made me some sweet custom ones, and I had some extra custom masks, what they don't normally do, so it took a while, but I'm happy I finally got them, and I'm excited to see what I got. So that'll be pretty cool. Hopefully they're amazing. Jared, how often do you replenish your pods? I have definitely randomly done it. I can't say there's any set schedule about it. If you have a newer tank, you don't necessarily need to add pods. They will find a way, but if you want to boost it up, adding pods and feeding Phyto to your tank is going to greatly increase your pod population. Now, I have added the Reef Nutrition ones to my tanks multiple times, for sure. It's not a regular thing, but definitely will help boost it. Now, if you have pipefish or mandarins or any of those ones that eat the pods and actually hunt them down, then you'd want to be at them a little more frequently, especially if you don't have a refugium. If you do have a refugium, you can get away with a bit less because they have a spot to grow. So it really depends on the system. What's going on? Atkins Nature Aquarium, New York in the house. Heck yeah. Are you still using the blades? These lovely guys, I sure am. So the blades I do have on here is accessory lighting. I do angle them a little bit just so they kind of work as a little bit of a light shade. And yeah, they work well. I have the whatever the blue ones are called, the glows, on there, and it's this kind of adds a little extra color pop to it, and it's a nice sleek way to do it. So I do like them. I think they're awesome lights. How is the Blade Refugium working out? Nice. Blade Refugium's been pretty awesome. If you guys have seen it, I mounted it inside the lid of my sump, so there's no light spill. It's completely in my sump. The light's supposedly waterproofish. Full disclosure, I may have accidentally dropped my lid in the water in the sump, and it's been fine. So still holding up, still being waterproof, so going strong. So it has been dunked. It is still completely in there. It gets ridiculous amounts of humidity because I see moisture drops on the lid, and yeah, it's going strong. So it's been a great light so far. Eddie, I forgot a bit about reefing. I feel like I'm relearning things. Eddie, you're in the right place, man. Any questions, ask away. John, I want another copper band after losing mine 12 months in. Concerning my fox face and purple tang are bigger now. Yep, I have one in each tank. I absolutely love them. Some people seem to have issues getting them to eat at first. The biggest thing that I always preach is to use manila clams from the seafood market. If they are not eating mysis, ideally buy one that is already eating frozen mysis from your LFS. If they're eating mysis, then it's pretty easy transition. If they're not eating mysis, then I found that the frozen manila clams are the way to go to get them eating. What's going on, Mike Lemming? How you doing, buddy? Do I get an acclimation box? It depends on your fish. One of the ones I added, perfectly fine, zero issue. In this tank, the yellow tang was being a bit of a bugger to him for the first day or two. So acclimation box is likely a good idea. I ended up using some of that like crochet craft mesh, like those white sheets with little tiny holes in it. Something to do with sewing. I used those and I actually made a divider in the tank down the middle and split it. So they each had their own half for a couple days, then I removed it and everyone was fine and happy. So 50-50 for me if they've got along nicely or there was a little bit of tiffs in the tank. Michael, how will you get pods in a new tank if you go with just synthetic dry rock? If you buy frags, coral, chaeto, any that type of stuff, there will likely be pods in it and they'll make a way into the tank. That being said, if you do hardcore dips and annihilate everything going in, then yes, it's going to be much harder for pods to get your tank, and that's definitely a scenario that you'd want to pick up some pods and seed your tank. Any suggestions on where to get a custom ATO container? Just set up a new tank and want something that will fit just right. Any place that does acrylic will do it. Like I know locally I have a shop called, what are they called? There's a local acrylic place. I forgot the name. But yeah, if you have any shop that sells acrylic, the odds are they will also make stuff out of acrylic. It's bugging me, I forget the name now. Now, you can also probably reach out to a lot of the companies that make the Reef ones. I've been using the... I know around there. My tank is top to bottom, full of soft corals. Do you think they will develop a tolerance over time or many are touching, but not dying? Soft corals generally can handle each other. They tend to be the more aggressive corals, to be honest. A lot of them will release toxins into the water. So that actually can be more of an issue for other corals, like hard corals, for instance. That can be an issue for them over time. If you run something like carbon, it will suck out those toxins. But soft corals touching soft corals, in general, 90% of the time it's fine. It's not an issue. They can handle it. It's just the other ones that count. Jared, what percent do you start on your blades when you put them on the tank? Are you going to increase percentage weekly? It depends what your current light is. If you're adding them as an add-on light, I would start low and slow. Milos Reef builds ATO containers. Sure does. He would actually be a great one because he can make it any size you want. Thank you. Good call. So with your light, if you're doing it as an add-on light, like you're adding the blues on top of your lights just to boost up some color and some par, start low and work them up. If you're adding them as your main light for the tank, it depends on what you previously had. Basically, if you had 100 par at the sand bed and you swap your lights and they're roughly 100 par at the sand bed, not an issue. If all of a sudden you double that to 200 par at the sand bed, all those corals up high are going to get roasted, and then you want to ease it into it. So it really depends what your previous one is and what your current one is. Now, just out of curiosity, I'm going to see what I actually have these ones set to. Sure. Aquariums, freight tank. So I'm curious what I put them at. I'm doing them more for color pop and a bit of flow light, so I don't think they're too high. Okay, so I have mine at 50% on all channels right now. So that's what I'm running these guys at. What's going on, Sid? Welcome. Mike Lemming, plumbing a new build, have to droop the return over the back because I'm not drilled for return. Would you recommend a lock line to someone, to some sort of a spray nozzle, or would it be easy PVC pitting work fine? Either one will work. I would hard plumb it over the edge likely, just so if there's ever a leak or anything comes off, it's in the tank. And if you put a threaded adapter into it, you can screw in whatever lock line you want for a nozzle. But PVC work absolutely fine as a jet of water. Back in the day, when you're using a return pump for your flow, it mattered a lot more for what type of nozzle you have. Like if you want a fan one or you want to use a flow accelerator or an RFG. So the lock line does give you a lot of different nozzles, but at the end of the day, if you have power heads in your tank and you're just using it just to cycle water in and out, it doesn't really matter. You can just use a fitting and you'll be fine. Just a 90 of PVC or 45, whatever you want to use. Have you ever tried Reef Pie? I've considered a controller, but I don't really like the Apex. I built my own. I have never used Reef Pie. I have built many things with Raspberry Pis. I have a plethora of them around. I did build my own with Arduino back in the day, but to be honest, when I was looking at buying the Atlas like pH stamps and ORP stamps and wanting to add all the probes to the tank. And when I wanted to do that, they were not cheap. They were like, it would have been a few $100s for all the stamps, or they call them stamps, or the little circuit boards, to add those probes to the tank. And for that price, I ended up just bought a used Apex with all the probes and everything for cheaper than what it cost me just to buy those Atlas Scientific little stamps to add those probes to my controller. And so at that point, I kind of like went over and I started using the Apex, and I kind of went away from my own controller. Now, the other thought is, if like the Reef Pi, like I love Raspberry Pis, they're awesome for projects, but you're going to sink a lot of time into that project. So if you want to spend time on it, I mean, great project to do. If you want to just work, then honestly, I would just buy like a pre-done controller. So it depends. But if you're not going to have all the inputs and you're mainly just using it for all the outputs, then at that point, you kind of almost got to wonder, should you just buy a bunch of smart plugs? So a few different ways to look at it. But I've definitely interfaced my own auto feeders. I've done all kinds of crazy projects with them back in the day. If you got lots of time to kill, it's fun. Jared, I have 3 Gen 5s to add blades for shadowing / pop. Solid chunk of light you got there, buddy. You'll be good. I would just start low. Start them at 15-20%, and then, you know, a couple weeks later, up a little bit more and up a little bit more. Or if you want to start them at, say, 50%, maybe you turn your radions down by 10%, just to kind of balance things out. Old school new venture. What do you think about placing corals in a new tank with cured dry rock for 1 year with yellow wrasses? I like yellow wrasse with 3 yellow wrasses. I would say go for it. You can put coral in a brand new tank as long as your parameters are stable. Like, they might not thrive right away, but they're generally fine. As long as your water parameters are good, add coral to the tank. Just make sure that you're paying attention to it once in a while and tweaking your parameters to keep them in check if it's your first time adding coral. Mike, my only thoughts when using the fan or an RFG for surface agitation, but if wave makers are enough, then I won't bother. Yeah, I honestly, if you're not doing crazy flow through your return pump, which I don't think you need to do crazy flow, then just rely on your wave makers and just use a basic return. Like on one of mine, I think I only have a nozzle on one of my 2, and the other one is just the hole at the side with like just a little screw and piece of lock line and no nozzle on it. Just for water exchange, doesn't really matter. Claudius Reefing Taylor, how you doing, man? How's the Reef Bot been working for you? The Reef Bot has actually been really solid. I do like the new Reef Bot Lab, I believe it's called, much more than the original Reef Bot, and I do think they fixed a lot of the little quirks about the old one. And yeah, it's been solid. I just use it for randomly testing stuff, and it's been good. I have not had to add more reagents since I refilled it, because I got those beastie 60 ml containers, which is great. And yeah, I just randomly will spot check stuff with it, and I've been happy. And if you do want to do it, code ReefDudes on their site gives you $100 off. I never said it when I did a video about it, but there's a discount if anyone does want to pick one up. Born to be a shooter Josh. What are the best ways to get rid of cyano without adding antibiotics? That is tricky. I'm afraid to do that because I have a couple of corals that are worth a ton and irresponsible, so not worth the risk. I have personally not had an issue dosing anything to get rid of it. Now, ChemiClean is the main one I've used, which is more of an antibiotic style from my understanding. There is ones from KZ that's a natural one, a bacteria-based one, but it's more expensive and it takes longer. But that might be a safer way. The other option is you just suck it out with a water change and just keep like manually removing it, and it will start to die back down. The other consideration, if there is something that's causing it, like out of whack nutrients, you need to look at that. You need to fix that first. So make sure your nutrients are in balance, manually suck it out, and just keep that up, and it will probably start to reduce itself on its own. Or you can use one of the supplements. Take your pick on that one. David, hey Dev, how long do you run your lights, and how can you tell if they should be running them longer than 8 hours? Okay, so for how long you run your lights, there is something called DLI, which is your daylight interval, something like that. And it is basically a summation of how much PAR you're putting out per day. It's basically PAR times duration. So you can run your lights at, say, 6 hours crazy intense. You could run it at 8 hours medium intensity. You can run it at 12 hours low intensity and still be delivering the same amount of light energy to your coral in a given day. So if you want your lights to be on longer, just turn down your intensity. If you want them not to be on shorter, you can boost up your intensity. Again, don't instantly do it, but you can ease into that over time. But it's hard to say if they should be running longer. It's just different options of how you want to run your lights. Chad Murphy, I made the stream. What's going on, Chad? All right, goalie mask. Question: Any luck getting a copper end to eat dehydrated mysis? I'm assuming you're meaning copper band butterfly. I have never used dehydrated mysis. I always buy the frozen stuff, and mine have always eaten it. I did have one, again, it took a little while to get him eating it, and that's when I did the manila clam route, and that's how I got him eating for the first few weeks until he merged onto mysis, and then I just feed mysis after that. Ryan McCollum, Mike Lemming, I made a spray bar from PVC with a 40 breeder, and it worked great. Drilled a bunch of holes for flow and surface movement. That's a great way to do it, too. Good old spray bars, they do work well. Mike, the new build will be plumbed and ready the next few weeks. Heck yeah. Mike, is this massive one you're doing in your basement still, or is this a different tank? I gotta catch up on yourself, buddy. How would you add 6 different tangs that have not all been together before? I would honestly add all your tangs at once. I know you have a massive tank, and usually most of your issues come from once a fish is established. So if one of them's been in there a while and you think it's his territory and you add new ones, he's usually the one that's going to be a bit of a bugger to the new fish. Where if you add them all at once, no one has territory yet, and they're all in the same boat. And like, where am I at noon? They all got settled in together. 2 things. One, I would add them when the lights are off, and also make sure you're feeding heavy for the first little while. If the fish are hungry, they're going to be more aggressive. If they're well fed, they're going to be more docile. So I would probably add, 2 nori clips to the tank, adding that many tangs. Again, make sure your filtration can handle adding 6 tangs at once, especially if they're big. If they're babies, you're probably fine. But those are the main kind of considerations. Lights off, make sure you feed heavy, and I'd probably add them all at once as long as your filtration can handle that. EDK, I bought a Reef Mat 1200. No more socks for me. Filter rollers are the way to go. I don't think I'd do socks again, to be honest. If I did, it would be the very meshy ones that you could rinse out super easy, but I don't think I'd go back to socks. If I didn't run socks, I would run a Chaeto Refugium and let the Refugium catch all my junk. Socks are just too much work to clean. Filter rollers are amazing because they keep your water pristine. They help prevent nutrients in your tank because they'll remove it before it breaks down your tank. But the only downside is then you got another consumable you got to buy is in the filter rolls. That being said, I'm running on my tank, and changing a roll every couple months beats washing socks weekly in my books. Born to be shooter, what that natural product Cyano you're talking about? It is from KZ. I feel like it's, I don't know, like Cyanobacter or something. Here, I'll Google it for you. KZ Cyano. Cyano Clean by KZ. I have used that, and it did work, but it was much slower than using something like HemiClean. But if you want the more natural approach, that's what I would look at. You are most welcome. 6 different tangs in sets of 3 different tanks with 2 tangs in each at the moment. All done, medicated quarantine. Mike, sounds like you're ready to roll, buddy. Yeah, honestly, I would add them all at once in your case. You have such a big tank, and then no one's established. There will much less risk of any aggression issues. Mark, what's your opinion on getting rid of sponges in your tank? Sponges are good. They clean your water. There is some sponges that can be invasive and overtake corals. However, most of them are pretty dang harmless, and they actually help your water quality. If you do not want the sponges, adding something like a dwarf angelfish will generally eat sponges. So that's a consideration. You can add a dwarf angel, they'll eat it. Some of them may pick at corals, some won't. This can be a bit of Russian roulette. I've had good luck with coral beauties. They haven't really had any issues with them. And again, they will eat your sponges. John, so frustrating that I can't have a bigger tank and 4 foot in the living room on a first floor flat. 4 foot's a good size, but I mean, bigger is nice. Tanks are addicting. It's, you know, a bit of a lifestyle. Everyone always wants to go bigger. You know, I agreed to my 2 tank limit for now. So again, I have 2 big tanks, but it's definitely an addiction. Yeah, sponges are choking my corals. Yeah, it's like a mean issue. Some sponges will die when exposed to air. So, I mean, you could do a big water change and leave your water down for a little bit. But a lot of the ones that I've had in corals in between zoas, like they came out easily. So you could literally just pull them out with your finger and it wasn't a big deal. But the only thing I know offhand to eat them would be a lot of the angels. What fish is that in your sump? I actually don't have any fish in the sump. I don't believe right now. No, in the tank. There is, what is in here? I have a Melanaris wrasse. I have a copperband butterfly, a chromis, a yellow tang, 2 clownfish. Pretty sure there's a Banggai cardinal hiding in there somewhere. A Tamini tang. A torch that's on the sandbed I gotta pick up. I got 2 different tuxedo urchins. And there's some other cool fish that I can't currently see hiding, but they're like a neon dotty back. I think I got a purple dotty back, and I got a couple other cool, bright little tiny fish that pop in and out constantly. Okay, Okay, Chris, what do you think about carbon dosing? My 75-gallon reef, the deep sandbed typically runs high phosphate. As far as carbon dosing, hasn't done much. Any suggestions? Okay, carbon dosing doesn't do much for phosphates. It's mainly to target nitrates. If you're worrying mainly about your phosphates, I generally prefer to use GFO, just because it's effective and it's pretty easy to control it. So GFO in a reactor works well. That being said, it did get a little more expensive the past year or so. There is stuff like lanthanum chloride, which is a chemical that will bind phosphates. You got to be a little careful dosing it depending on your fish, and you got to dose that slowly. But it is cheaper than GFO. But I tend to prefer GFO personally, and that will just knock back your phosphates fairly aggressively. So don't overdo it. Go slow with it, and then it works well. Barry, filter rollers have the Reef mat 1200. I haven't used the Reef mat. I'm curious how you guys like it. I've heard good things. It looks like a pretty slick system. Does anyone have a lot of detritus in your refugium? Not tons. I don't know. I'm gonna say on my tank probably every when I do a water change every 4 months or so, I will vacuum out the sump a bit and just clean up any detritus that builds up. How often do you use phytoplankton? Daily, weekly, or as needed? When I was culturing it myself, I probably added it every day or every other day. Now that I haven't cultured it in a while, I do have the Reef Nutrition one, and I would just say I randomly add it. Most of the days I just feed, mysis and nori. Some days I'm more motivated, and then I'll get the oyster feast and oyster eggs and Phyto, and I'll just go random. So, randomly. Born to be shooter Josh. I actually just had a sponge almost kill a basketball-sized splatterhammer. Dang, it's an aggressive sponge. Had grown all the way and almost taken over. Wow, that is definitely an aggressive sponge. John, what's your favorite fish and coral? Oh, such a hard question. Very, very hard question. I don't know. I like different ones for different reasons. For acros, I love milliporas. I just love the big shaggy polyps. I think they're amazing. For mushrooms, I love my super duper orange crazy ones. I think they're cool. I like different corals for different reasons. I do love gonies as well. I still dig them. I do want to acquire more of them one day and just do tons of gonies in the tank. I think that'd be amazing. So it's hard to say. I like different ones for different reasons. As for fish, copperband's a super cool fish. I also love mandrins. I think they're super awesome. I just like different, unique, colorful, pretty things. So it really is a hard question. Joey, as for miracle mud, how much does one add to the refugium? In my water box, I just dumped a whole bag in there. Whole bag of miracle mud and a whole bag of Aquaforest Life Source. And that's why I add to that tank. Lots of people say to add it slower or dose it, or I just went all in. So that when I do the aquabiomics test again, it'll be interesting to see how that's held up over time. because I've only added it the one time. Must a reflection somewhere. Yeah, you might have. There could be something reflecting on the bottom because there's a glass sump as well. Or going crazy. I mean, hey, either one's possible. Happens. Niagara Fire Crows. I have a 1200. It's awesome. Nice. That's the Red Sea Reef mat. If I ever get another one, I will try it. I have the Claris CSK 5000 on both my tanks right now. I wish the reef mat wasn't 200 microns. The higher micron socks used to polish the water better. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's a balance. If it's too low of a micron, you're going to just clog it faster and won't last as long. If it's too high, it lasts longer but doesn't polish it quite as much. So it's a trade-off. It'd be cool if they had different options of roll size, or like BRS sells them the sediment filters where it's like looser to like more tight as it goes, so it kind of does a range, which is kind of a funky way to do it. So it kind of gets both. Claudius Reefer Taylor, I'm thinking of 3D printing all of my rock structures using PETG and then using a decent amount of bio bricks and live rock and stuff. I thought about that. I thought it'd be really cool in the Nano to 100% 3D print the aquascape. So let me know if you do it. I want to see photos. I've definitely thought about it for like years. I haven't done it. I don't know if I'd do it on a massive tank. Maybe. I definitely thought about it, but it would be really cool. So I'd love to see it. PETG is safe. I say go for it, man. I think that'd be really cool to do. You'd have amazing water flow. You could, have a bazillion coral placements built in. And yeah, I think it'd be sweet. John is like choosing between your children. I know, right? The struggle is real. Atkins Nature Aquarium. Does anyone still do cryptic sumps? I plan on keeping my sump dark. So far, lots of cool sponges. I've used a cryptic reactor on my sump. So before, I'm not using it at the moment because I don't have the space for it, but I was using a cryptic reactor, which was basically a big chamber and had a big sticker around it with all the logos and stuff, so that it was completely dark in there, and I had it packed full of like bio bricks, so it was just tons and tons of surface area. And yeah, you don't have to worry about any algae or any funkiness going in there. It's a great place for pods, so there was definitely some benefits to it. Now the difference of it's lit or not lit, I don't know if there's a big differentiator in that, aside from there's less algae and less stuff growing, right, because it's dark. So trade-off. How often do you replenish your cleanup crew? Again, nothing set in stone. I do randomly add some, mainly because my wrasses are punks and they'll slowly pick off my snails. And once I notice a plethora of snails in my sand bed, and every once in a while I'll just pick up a handful more out of LFS. Dart Frog Dojo, what's going on, Dart Frog? How do you keep your phosphates and nitrates from botting out when using a refugium? Add more fish to your tank, or feed more. I have not had this tank. I've had actually very low phosphates and nitrates. My other tank, they're always higher, but I have a lot of big fish in that tank and a lot of fish, so that keeps my nitrates up. Now, if you're using refugium and your phosphates and nitrates are bottoming out, the easiest thing to do is tone down your refugium. If you have an adjustable light, turn down the intensity, or if you don't have an adjustable one, run it for less hours. So the less algae growth, the less that refugium is going to pull out those nutrients. So that's going to be your simplest approach. Again, if you have a skimmer, you could run your skimmer less hours. Like on mine, I'm only running my skimmer at nighttime now, so I think I'm running it from like 8 p.m. to 10 a.m. or something like that. That's mainly for pH reasons, because I'm trying to play with upping it at nighttime and then just letting it do its own thing during the day. Whether or not it makes a big difference, time will tell, but current experiment. Mark, so many questions being answered. How about some thumbs up? YouTube appreciates thumbs up. If you guys enjoy it, hit the thumbs up button. I appreciate it too. Brendan, depth sediment filters what you mean. Yes, it is. Thank you. As you may notice, I now have a small child and slightly sleep deprived at times, so takes a minute on some of these questions. Mike Lemming, do you put a temp probe in the main display or sump? I always put them in the sump because I don't like seeing any gear in my tank, but I don't have to. Same reason I'm a huge fan of using like the Vortex, like all my MP40s, because I have no wires, I have nothing over the glass. It just looks clean and crisp. Now, for a spot check, because we were talking earlier about the flow from your sump to your display tank. Ideally, your display tank and your sump should be pretty dang close to the same temperature. And if it is, your water flow from your return pump is perfect. If your display is cold and your sump is hot, you probably need to up your flow a bit. So as long as the temperature is roughly the same in both, in my opinion, your flow is perfectly fine. Now, I mean, if you have a top or a canopy, somewhere you can hide a temperature probe, it definitely doesn't hurt to throw one in both, and then you have that comparison. But in general, I had everything possible in my sump. Reef with me, what's your experience with Life Source? I dumped a bag of it into my water box tank, and a few weeks later, I did the microbiome testing on the tank, and I had a very diverse bacteria culture, or very diverse bacteria profile, I guess, in my tank. Now, this was about a year ago. I do have another aquabiomics test that I really need to test my tank. Maybe I'll do this weekend and I'll send it in. So in a few weeks, I will let you know how things have changed over the past year or so, because I am very curious on that one. Island Reef, suggestions for biomedia. I have used many. This tank currently, I have mainly the eShops BioLux, because they're a tall rectangular, I guess, brick, and they fit perfectly between my baffles, which worked very well. I'm actually mainly using that one in both tanks. They're very hard and they don't really break down. I've used the Brightwell bricks in the past, and I've actually probably used a ton of them, but those are the ones I'm doing. I just really like the size of them right now. They do work quite well. Mark Clark, 550 super chat. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Thank you, buddy. Plan on adding holes for frags throughout the scape and making connection points to make it modular. Yeah, Claudius, that'd be sweet. You should totally do it. And I definitely send me photos when you do. John Wright, Mike, I have an Inkbird controller and keep both probes in the display tank. Mike, thank you for the live stream tonight. I appreciate the work you put in. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for hanging out with me. Ryan, any tips on lowering silicates? There is... The first question you gotta ask yourself, are the silicates in your tank because it's something you're dosing, or are they coming from your source water? If they're coming from your source water, you can get the silicate buster DIs, which have some extra resins in there that help remove the silicates from your source water so you're not adding it in the first place. As for removing them from your water, I feel like the Brightwell aggressive fixed stuff one removes it. I'm not 100%, but I believe it does. Sponges will also remove silicates from your water, or you can just do a big water change. But the biggest thing is you need to make sure it's not your RODI or your source water that's adding silicates to the tank. Otherwise, it's just like a pointless uphill battle. What's going on, RC? John Wright, I like my probes in my display because in summer it can get high to make my cooler switch on. Yeah, so I put on mine, I have 2 fans actually. For when my tank gets too warm, I have 2 fans that blow across the water. So Here's Aquatics made a really cool model that's basically like a rectangle with a little hook over the top, and I mounted them behind my tank, and I put 2 120mm computer fans in it, so my tank's too warm. They're very hidden, they're very stealthy, and it blows water towards the water surface. And I found that worked really well in my tank. So it's really cool. If you have a 3D printer, it's a really cool model, or he probably sells them as well. Jared, how often do you dose amino acids? If so, what kind? AB+, Fuel, Acropower? I've tried them all. I honestly can't say if there's a big difference between the different brands. If you are feeding something like mysis, that is more of an oily food, I don't think you need to worry as much about dosing amino acids. If you're just feeding like pellets and flakes and dry foods, then I do think there is more of a benefit to dosing the aminos. Honestly, they're all going to work for you. I can't say one is drastically better than the other. I've probably interchangeably just used random ones, and they've all been good. So whatever one's on sale. Good answer. I really like watching the replay on your streams. Thanks, Atkins. This sounds funny, but I almost want to go back and watch some of my old streams. Like some of the people like Lou and some of them having some amazing conversations, which I kind of almost want to go refresh myself on them. Oh, on that side note, if there's anyone you want me to get on a stream or anyone you think would be amazing guests, let me know. I talked to Chris Macy, and I think I might have him on next week. And yeah, if there's anyone specific, let me know, and I'll reach out and see if we can get some fun streams rolling. I do have a couple of cool ideas to get some little, like, find some other people that grow coral and, like, reefing kind of mini experts and just dig into what they're doing and how they do it. And I do think those are always useful ones, because I personally love to hear the different ways of doing things, because there is no right and wrong in reefing. There's this works for this guy, this might work for this guy, and there's 10 different ways to accomplish the same thing. And I think it's cool to learn all the different aspects and different methods that people are successful with. So that will hopefully be a cool little like mini series, or we'll do maybe like a monthly stream with a couple, reefing experts-ish that are successful coral growing businesses. I think that'll be fun. Jared, how often do you dose aminos? Okay, did talk about that one. Children take up a lot of time. Yes, they do. Only one left in the house now, but still not as much as time that I would love for my tanks. Yeah, I feel you, man. Work, kids, YouTube. I don't know what this free time is you speak of. Aussie Dad, my refugium seems to be mostly a slimy green algae rather than chaeto. What can I do to eliminate the slime so the chaeto thrives? It really depends on what that slime is. I'm going to take a blind guess and say it's possibly green cyano. So I would treat your tank for cyano and see if it goes away. And if it does, then your chaeto is likely going to be much happier. What's going on, Robsy? David Gratcha Frag Box. I will get March on again. Haven't had him on in a while. Okay, we'll get March on. I actually emailed him the other day, so I'm sure we'll see him again too. I'd love to see Cunningham's Reef again. All right, I'll get Ryan and March on. Check. The Lou X ones are probably watched 5 times. So much gold in there. All right, okay, I'm gonna write these down. Okay, Lou, March, Ryan. Okay, all right, I will get those guys lined up for over the next few months. Could you get reef beef? That would be interesting, actually. I should reach out to Rich and Ben. That could be an interesting conversation. All right, I'll see if they'd be up for it. It would probably have a lot of fun, actually. It'd be a lot of heckling and BSing. It'd probably be a fun one. Top secret so far. I might dabbling with doing a general aquatic podcast with somebody, so that might become a thing, like probably like a legit audio podcast. I know I keep talking about it, but it might be like a mixture of fresh salt, just aquatics in general. So that might turn into a thing. We're dabbling. John, one of my favorites. I would have said Jake. Yeah, I know, our good old Rip Jake. We were talking about doing a stream too, because we both had the 200-gallon Peninsula tank and just having a conversation with them, and we both did very similar things with how we set up our tanks. We thought it was kind of cool, the parallel. So we actually planned on doing a stream, but then unfortunately it never happened. So poor guy. That's unfortunate. Get Brendan's Reef on. Hey, you never know. I gave up dart frogs with 2 little kids in the house. Not enough time to culture fruit flies, feed, clean up after the kids, dogs, fish, etc. Really? I don't know, man. Actually, Reef Twerk would probably be a good one. I'll see if I can get him on. He's in the UK though, so time zones might be an issue, but I'll add him to my list. I'm sure he'll be up for it at some point. The dart frogs are so easy. I do absolutely hardly anything. It's like 4 minutes a week to make fruit flies, and the rest is easy. I don't know. That's the biggest advantage. They take like no time. There's like no cleaning the glass. Everything's automated. But anyways, that'd be good. John Wright would love to have you in your fish or coral without a ridiculous price. What would you love to have in your tank? Fish or coral without a ridiculous price? I have always liked the Lenardi wrasses. I think they're super cool. They're blue and gold, but they're like $1,000, and I could never spend that on a fish. But they're really cool. Coral wise, I don't know. I like anything that's super polypy. I like anything that has like crazy colors. Obviously, everyone likes those. And again, I would love to do a bazillion Ghanies, which one day I might just slowly collect up Ghanies and turn this tank into an extremely Ghani heavy tank, but we'll see. How's the Calc slurry experiment going? So I'm not doing full slurry anymore. I'm doing something kind of in the middle. It's more potent than regular Calc because it's not clear, but it's not dripping the powder in a direct slurry, so it's kind of in the middle what I'm doing. I've been doing that for a long time, and it's been well. Something halfway there. Have you or when you have any problems with Red Sea Dip-X bleaching Acropora? I have never used Dip-X, so I cannot comment on that one. Island Reef, what do you think of open brains? Any challenges, things I should be aware of? I've had them in the past, and I can't say I've done anything specific for them. They've just kind of been happy and just general happy water quality parameters. Are you aware of Shane Danger Coleman, Australian with incredible knowledge of coral? I am not, but I'm going to copy and paste this and look him up later. And I'll see. I appreciate anyone with a great knowledge of coral. There's always wonderful guests to have on. Huge parallels between dart frogs, vivariums, and reef tanks. There really is. I don't know why, but there is. And I really enjoyed them both recently. I have, super funny, not funny, but side thing. My first little baby tadpole that turned into a frog, he was like my pinky nail, super tiny. I add him to my second vivarium downstairs. And I have not seen him until today. I didn't see him for like a month. I was like blindly just throwing some fruit flies in there every few days, making sure there's food in there. And I'm like, hopefully he's alive. And then today I finally saw him, so it made me happy to actually see the little guy in there. It was good. What are the chances I can get the brackets for those AI blades? If you have some basic tools, they are not that hard to make. If you want me to make them for you, that is more questionable. Due to babies and lack of free time. That being said, I am trying to work out a deal with somebody for producing some of these cool things that I make for me, so that there can be all kinds of cool like accessories and products and cool creations, but I don't have to make them all. So hopefully this works out, and hopefully there will be an option for that in the near future. Todd Garner of Biota would be an amazing guest. Gonna guess. I feel like I had someone from Biota on a long time ago. Might have been Kevin Gaines. I've had someone from Biota on a long time ago. Okay, I'll add it to the list. I'll see if I can reach out to him. Second from Biota. Alright, sounds like Biota is good. We'll see if we can rope in Todd for this stream. John, I'm amazed how many reefers don't have more than one heater with a controller. I am a big fan of dual heaters, and that is a great point. Both my tanks have dual heaters. I believe there's two, I don't know if they're 200 or 250 or 300 watt ones on this tank, and I believe there's two 300-ish ones on my other tank. Dual heaters are 100% the way to go. If you need 400 watts of heat for your tank, buy two 200 watt heaters, or two 250 watts. If one of them dies, the other one has enough power to keep your tank afloat. If one of them stuck on, it does not have enough power to cook your tank. Now you couple that with a heater controller and you have that extra level of backup. So definitely the way to go. You should get me in the show, Manoj. We'll chat later. Message me on Facebook or Instagram. You never know. Maybe we'll do something fun. Todd's right down the road from me. There you go. Tell Todd to come on my stream. We'll both bug him. You have a bigger sweater than a 2X you Canadians run small. I have no idea what that one is. Probably clothes sizing. Yes, but the frog room with 9 vivs, more than you would think. Yeah, that's fair. I only got 2 vivariums. Now, that being said, if I ever redo and have a bigger office, I will do like a massive vivarium because I think they're super cool. Like a big jungle. Get the reef in the jungle. I think it'd be really cool to somehow do a paludarium style with saltwater in a vivarium. Don't know how well that would work, but I think it would be absolutely so cool to like blend them all together. Maybe one day. Heat mine with a gas hot water tank. That is a good way to go. Any coupons for Aqua Biome? I'm going to send it for the fun of it. I do not have any, but I do plan on luring Eli from Aqua Biome back onto the stream once I do my second test and get the results back. So we can ask him about one. Never know. Maybe he'll be nice and create one for me. Yeah, hot water tank. If you have a big tank and a gas hot water tank, if you run like a big PEX loop or something in your sump and use that to heat your tank, that's going to be vastly cheaper than electricity. It's a cool way to go. My tanks are technically like solar-ish now, because I have solar panels on the roof, so it kind of covers my tank. I'm still using the grid, but it's kind of fun. It's nice to know that theoretically the solar could power all my tanks. I need a bigger ReefDudes sweater. The sleeves are a bit short. Oh, on that note, I have to redo most of the shirts and clothes on my thing because the printer, aka Printful, was discontinuing the current blanks that I was using to print all my stuff on. So I need to redo them all. And I've also been trying to play with make some cool artwork too. If you saw the cover today of the cool anglerfish, I might try and make some cool like canvasy office art things for myself, but I'll throw them on the site as well. for like the print on demand ones because they're fun. So yeah, anyways, I do plan on redoing all my shirts and picking out a new blank. I just got to order some samples and figure out what else is a nice comfy shirt to work with. You should join Friday night live fish place live stream. Who does that live stream? Let me know. I might try one day. I usually have a date night with my wife on Friday night, so that one's a bit trickier, but I'll see if I can sometime. Exactly how I did it, heating 400 gallons. Yeah, it's a good way to do it in Niagara Fire corals. If I had if you have a 400 gallon tank, that's honestly the way to go to heat it. All right, guys, we are just about an hour and a half, so I'm probably going to cut her off fairly soon, maybe 10 more minutes. So if you guys got any other questions or stuff you want me to dig into, definitely let me know. But a quick shout out. Thank you guys for the super chats. Shelly, Jay's Aquarium, Tanuik6394, Joe, Hemlock, aka EDK, aka Eddie, and Mark. Thank you guys for the super chats. I definitely appreciate those. What else I got new? I don't know. My only other bit of new exciting is going to be the screen, or the mesh tops that were made from top lids. I haven't even opened the box yet. I'm excited for it. Probably do it maybe tomorrow night. Actually, I'm open and check them out, but I'm super stoked to see what I actually got. And one thing I'm actually going to do too is I got them to, I haven't seen them, but I asked for it, so hopefully, to get inserts for this so I can tone down the humidity in my office because it's a small room and this is a ridiculously large amount of water for how tiny my room is. So that will hopefully a little less humidity in here. And this tank, for whatever reason, the heaters kick on way more than my water box. And I don't know if it's just from like the western facing windows heating up the room more on that one, where this one I don't get a lot of sun direct in it. It's probably the reason. But this one uses more power for the heaters because of that. So if I cut back the evaporation a bit, it's just going to hold it in the heat a bit. So I think that might reduce the power consumption, make my office less humidity, and look pretty sweet. And so keep the fish safe. So anyways, we will find out because that will probably be, I don't know, maybe next week's video, within the next 2 weeks. All right, guys, thank you for hanging out tonight. Thank you guys for super chats. Thank you for hitting that like button and hanging out tonight. And yeah, they're kind of fun. Random question streams are always good. So if you guys enjoyed it, hit that like button. If you're new, make sure you subscribe.